This is Rashawn Slater, first round draft pick for the LA Chargers, and you're listening to the Charged Up Bolts podcast. Bolt up.
Hey, Bolt fam, how's it going? This is your boy Adroit Airs, hashtag Audible Chocolate. We're out here doing our thing at the Herbert Hangar, and I've got some special guests with me. So it's my good friend that you know so well, John Waz Jr., coming directly from London. But we've got two great guests from the Raider Take podcast. That's Andy and Micah. Really happy to have them on here. If you're listening to the podcast, that's at Micahson55. That's MICAHSON 55, and at _. Andy Mac 2 _. Don't forget those 2 underscores. You'll be bugging a different Andy Mac 2, who's an Arsenal fan. So go Arsenal. Anyways, happy to have you guys on here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. Appreciate it.
Cool. So the reason we have you guys on here and the reason we're doing this thing together is we really want to get a really good understanding of how the other fan bases are feeling about their team. And obviously we're looking on the outside at the Raiders going, is this for real? You know, what do we have to fear about coming up on Monday? You know, are we worried about Josh Jacobs? What's his injury status? If you've got any inside information there or anything like that. But first, let's start how is Raider Nation feeling about a 3-0 start?
Mike, I'll let you start there, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that Raider Nation is always like the highest of the high when we get some type of winning streak. Raiders haven't gone 3-0 since 2002 when they went to the Super Bowl. So that's a little different angle to it. Raider Nation is high. With Raider Nation, there's one side or the other. They're extremely high or people are super pessimistic, and there's not a whole lot in the middle. So if you're on Raiders Twitter, you're seeing a lot of optimism right now. You're also seeing a lot of we're going to get let down again type of thing. So, but I think right now, as we sit here going into week 4, a lot of optimism to look at.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's interesting. I joined Twitter last year, so I'm pretty new to all this. And Mike has been able to kind of get me through the ups and downs of Raider Nation. So it's a funny question because I don't think it'll ever be answered, right? I don't think there's ever a true temperature check of where Raider Nation is, but I think as far as what we've seen and how we've looked at it is there's been some good quality wins. The little things that we've been able to adjust and grow on have been good. We can't, we're actually developing our draft picks, which usually they're just we'll take them and trade them or cut them within a year. So I think there's certain things that have been promising. At the end of the day, they're still the Raiders and they're still going to be 3-0 with 2 overtime wins that feel like we should have lost the game. So I think it's a lot of different feelings, but we're 3-0 and there's a lot of things to look forward to, but a lot of corrections out there. You're muted.
So I was just on mute there. John, you're on mute, buddy.
Sorry about that. I'm just really curious about how you guys are feeling and the fan base is feeling about Gus Bradley. Obviously, he was our defensive coordinator for many years. So now he's running your guys' defense. Looks pretty solid, as most Gus Bradley defenses go. But do you have any worries about the defensive side of the ball coming into Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump into it. As far as Gus Bradley and what he's shown through the first 3 weeks, I think what really it's come down to is we're disciplined. We're more disciplined than we have been. A lot of it's an assignment-based defensive scheme, right? So I think there's a lot of ways where we took a little aggressive approach with Gunther in the past, and Ken Norton Jr. if you want to go back that far. But there are certain things where guys were just out of position. I think he's able to look at it, and I think it can be soft at times. It can be a little. He doesn't dial it up as much, and I think that shows as far as how many blitzes we've sent home throughout the first 3 weeks. But all in all, I think it's an assignment based, it's a discipline based defense, and he's been able to get up to this point the most out of the players. You think Jonathan Abram, he moves all around. He's not Derwin James. I love Derwin James, by the way, just to put it out there. Abram's not Derwin James by any means, but he has used him all across the scheme, and I think that's been advantageous for Abrams. So I think you see a lot of those good things, and but at the end of the day, you got to have the guys to do it and execute and stay disciplined. So I'm happy. I'm happy with Bradley up to this point.
Yeah, I would just second all of that. I think the biggest thing that we've seen in regards to, like Andy was saying, with the blitzes is that we've been able to create pressure with just the four guys up front, or the five guys up front. And so that, for Raider Nation, we have never had much of a pass rush, outside of having Khalil Mack doing everything. But just to be able to get to the quarterback within the interior four has been such a huge difference for us. And, it's just like Andy was saying, just so much more discipline, so much more like guys like knowing their job and doing their job specifically instead of like trying to do everything and them just blowing coverages all over the place. So, so far, very excited.
I mean, guys, I wrote yesterday actually an article on Mike Williams, who's obviously playing lights out for the Bolts. I think the matchup with him and Casey Hayward's going to be absolutely phenomenal on Monday. Hayward's playing lights out right now. I think he's one of the top 5 defensive backs in coverage. He's not giving an awful lot up. He's going to be under the cosh with Keenan Allen as well on Monday. But that's also a flip side because you guys are playing unbelievably. Your passing game and our passing game are arguably the two strongest facets of our teams. So I think when both teams got the ball on the football on Monday night, I think we're going to see some really good matchups. How you guys shut down our passing game and vice versa, I think it's going to be really interesting because we've got two quarterbacks. Surprisingly, Derek Carr is probably in the form of his life right now. It's not really a surprise that Herbert is playing where he is after his rookie year, but Hayward versus Williams and Allen is probably going to be the thing that I'm going to be looking forward to most. Has Hayward surprised you this season?
I think he's been as advertised, right? And I think that's been promising because we brought in guys in the past where they, we thought we were going to get a certain lift out of them, but it all comes down to scheme fit. It all comes out to how we actually play them. So Hayward, with the familiarity of Gus Bradley, is great, and he is healthy, right? And he's still playing up to what we thought. So I think that's really the case. I mean, when it comes down to it, if I know we'll get into the more preview later, but the three quarterbacks we face have been Lamar, Roethlisberger, and Jacoby Brissett. And you think Lamar, he can extend the play, but he's not a true pocket passer from that extreme, right? So I think there have been certain things we've been able to get away with a little bit. And so with Herbert, he's not only someone that can escape when it's a 4-man rush, but he can also create down the field. He can also create accurately down the field. So that's something that, I'm afraid of. And also with, Keenan Allen's route running ability. And I mean, he's just fantastic all across the boards. But Mike Williams, it's not 50-50 when the ball's in the air. It's about 70-30. So he's someone that I'm afraid of, and it's going to be a good battle. But all in all, Hayward, I've been really, really happy with.
Yeah, definitely. He's been great. And he, going into this year, we looked at our secondary and said, we got a lot of young guys, a lot of young, promising talent. We need a vet to come in and kind of shape that room, show them how to be, professionals and bring them along, but also, be a key part to our defense. And we've brought in vets before that were going to be like role players. We've tried to bring in guys that were, we wanted to be that route. Hayward's kind of the only guy in a long time that's actually done that, come in to be a vet, but also, be the top corner on our team and be the, that number one guy or, 1A, 1B with Mullen. So we do have some injuries, coming from this last game on the defensive back side of things, but Hayward has definitely been, like Andy said, as advertised. And it was kind of finally one of those sighs of relief that like you bring him in for this thing and then he's actually that thing. So.
Yeah, I think Nate Hobbs will learn a lot from Hayward as well. And he's playing good. One of your 5 defensive rookies that you drafted this year. So yeah, it's exciting times for the Raiders when you've got the likes of him coming through. Young Henry Ruggs. You've got some talent there on that roster. It's going to be a competitive division again.
Yeah, I think it's competitive. I think, I think you make an interesting point there that I had not considered, right? We talked about, we think about the Broncos being 3-0, and not everyone, or I think anyone maybe except for the Broncos themselves, believe that. I mean, they've played, all 3 teams are 0-3 that they've played, and they're some of the worst teams in the division. So I think they've got the Raiders and then the Ravens coming up. So 2 hardcore defenses. So we'll see how that team responds when they're actually playing some decent teams coming up. But I think for the Chargers side of the ball, if I think about like what's the temperature of the Bolt fam, how are we feeling about it? I think there's just a lot of positivity, and I think, I think Twitter in general, to your point, Andy, can be a bit of a can be a bit of a toxic place sometimes, especially when things aren't going well. I mean, there was a lot of positivity heading into last year, and I was one of the believers in our previous head coach, Anthony Lynn. And then when things started to fall apart pretty bad there, and it became very apparent that Anthony Lynn should not be a head coach in the NFL, I mean, the tide turned real quick. There was a lot of negativity about a lot of it. So, I know on this podcast, we try to stay positive and try to focus on the positive, but I mean, when your team is on the bottom of a division, it's hard for you to stay positive, right? Like, I mean, I have to imagine, I've been in contact after our conversation with the Chiefs podcast last week. There's a lot of negativity going on in Kansas City because of their 1-2 start. Being in last place in the division is probably not something that holds true for them, but it just makes it harder for them to win the division that everybody seemed to say, hey, it's definitely the Chiefs, and then everybody else is kind of fighting for second place, right? Well, that's obviously not the case so far, and I'm really excited to see this division. Between the teams in the division, I think none of them are really as they say, an easy out. So I think there's a lot of excitement going on. I think there's a lot of us going, hey, you know what? This could be a division that's just, one of the premier divisions in the league, kind of the opposite of the NFC East, I would say, where it's just kind of a bunch of punching bags in there. This is a division full of teams that I think can win in any given Sunday, right? Like we make fun of the Broncos for their start, but there's still some quality players. I mean, that defense is solid and the offense has playmakers, their quarterback is suspect. But I mean, I think, when you've got the likes of Carr playing the way he is, Herbert being, having a great sophomore year, and of course Mahomes. I mean, those are three deadly quarterbacks in one division. You're gonna have a tough time winning the division year in, year out. You've got the team like, when you had Brady and the Patriots, it just seemed like every year they were just going to win the division. You just lock it in and knew that. And I think the Chiefs were feeling that way. And I think their fans had kind of felt that way, but I think they've been exposed, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't think it's as easy as an out in the division as they thought. So I definitely see some positivity on our side. What about you, Waz? You feeling the same positivity?
Yeah, I am. I mean, there's two things that irritate me about the NFL narrative. One is when they start talking about MVPs after 1 and 2 weeks, and the other one is when they talk about the strength of schedule. A lot of people outside the AFC West will look at the Chargers and go, well, who they played? And they'll say they've played two NFC East teams and they had a lucky win against Kansas, 2-1. So what? And the narrative would probably be the same about the Raiders and the Broncos. But we know there's that term, any given Sunday. You just do not know what's going to happen. When that first snap's taken place, you just do not know. Look at the Browns. Is it 2016, 17? They won one game against the Chargers. I'm guessing a lot of people put money on the Chargers to blow the Browns away. It didn't happen. You just don't know. And I just don't buy into that. You've got a weak schedule, or you should be walking. They've talked about San Francisco 49ers walking their way to the playoffs. I don't buy that. There's so many permutations, there's so many things that can go wrong. A drop, a fumble, as we've seen with the Raiders and the Chiefs, key injuries. You just don't know, and I think people have to respect the results as they come out. Going from week to week. The Raiders have had a hot start. The Broncos have had a hot start. Chargers should be 3-0. We're not. We dropped one against Dallas. The Chiefs, I think, maybe a bit complacent. I don't know what you guys think. From a Raiders perspective, what a Raider Nation is saying about Kansas City? Is it like they're on decline? They'll bounce back? I don't know, Andy.
They're saying a lot about the Chiefs, but I agree with what you guys are both saying, because what it comes down to is the Chiefs are just. They're so good, and they've always had the same weaknesses, right? They always haven't been able to establish the run as quite well than they should. And also the defense has always been a liability, but the offense has just been too overpowering. And that makes you, on the other side of the ball, you have to just play catch up, right? But what you guys are talking about is really the talent gap between the teams aren't that big, right? And so that's why if you're not on, if the Chiefs aren't on, and they've always just been, hey, they're comfortable blowing you out and they're comfortable being down 2 scores with 10 minutes left, right? So I think that's kind of what we're talking about, where, for good, for on both sides with the Chargers and the Raiders, is we've been able to get better in those areas to make it more competitive and not make it a sure thing. So I think I don't think the Chiefs are on the decline. I think they're talented enough to turn around, but there's some glaring weaknesses they need to address, and teams will game plan week by week on that. So I think that's what I look at. I think, the Raiders Twitter, the fan base, they're always just going to take shots at the Chiefs, and that's fun. It's fun for me, but I'm like, hey, this is week 3. I'll take those shots in week 16, 17 when they're bounced or eliminated, but from the playoff contention. But right now, I'm just like, let's just stand pat. So
yeah, I mean, look at you got to week 10 last year. And everyone's like, yeah, Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl. Russell Wilson's going to be the MVP. Stop talking like that. There's so much football to be played. Let's talk. Let's have this conversation in January. Is it that you don't need to fill the gaps with that sort of narrative, in my opinion, because there's enough to be talking about, in week to week without this. Look, people listen to it and it's fun to say, but I like to leave that sort of chat for post-Christmas,
Yeah, I think that with the Chiefs, like we've always known that their defense was the weak part of their team, and that their defense wasn't that great compared to their offense. And their offense has always been very good and been able to essentially, I'm not going to say bail them out of games, but win games for them. Their offense is perfect. The defense doesn't have to be perfect for them to win games. And I think you're starting to see Mahomes kind of slip up a little bit. 2 picks that you guys got against him last week. That the whole like him making things happen is kind of backfiring on him a little bit. And the offense hasn't been perfect, and the defense hasn't been able to bail them out. So I think that's one nice thing that we've seen somewhat a little bit with the Raiders, that the offense has kind of had a little bit of a slow start, but the defense has been able to bail them out. So
I mean, on the Chiefs, when we were 14 up on Sunday, I was losing my mind. My wife's going, "What's the matter?" I said, "Look, this is the Chiefs." And what happened? We gave up 17 unanswered points. And I guess from a Raiders standpoint, you might feel the same as me. I love watching the Chargers. I don't necessarily enjoy it because I'm so anxious about trying to get the W. Look, our last sort of 2 seasons under Lynn were pretty horrendous, and you were just like sat behind, doing this throughout the game. And I think we've got a lot of healing to do as fans to try and gain trust back in our team, despite a good start. Is that a fair assumption, John? Is that a fair assessment? Yeah, and I'm guessing you guys are the same, because you've been through the mill, and John Gruden's obviously got a plan, but he's got a 10-year deal with you guys, and
he's got a retirement plan, is what he has.
He's got a retirement plan, but everyone sort of had a meltdown when Khalil Mack went to Chicago, but he's going about things in his own way, and we're not. The Chiefs having a meltdown because they're 1-2. They've had it easy over the last 4, 5, 6 years. Bit like New England. Some fan bases are going to have to get used to losing. Where we're now sort of hopefully on the rise, but we're still not sure where we are and where we're going to finish. I suppose that's the unknown, isn't it, of the NFL?
Yeah, John, let me ask you a question. Because going into this year, right, like Herbert's sophomore season, like you talked about, where he had an incredible rookie year, and then you kind of shift a little bit with the coaching staff. You bring in Brandon Staley, you bring in a new offensive coordinator, and it's only been 3 games, right? Like what we're talking about. That's the perspective. But what have you seen the differences between Staley, just as a coach, and because you guys lost a lot of games last year, and 1-score games, time management, and those. I'll get to the question, I promise. But like last week, right, where Staley just went for it on 4th down. Okay, that probably would have never happened last year or the years before. So, what are your thoughts on just Staley's transition to kind of being the head coach, and then the concerns going into it with the new offensive scheme and regimen and how he's adapted to it?
Well, I think number one, I think exhibit 1 of the difference between last year and this year was this last game. I mean, last year, you've probably heard about it on multiple telecasts now, but last year Herbert gets thrown in literally a minute before the kickoff. They're like, hey, we just basically murdered Tyrod Taylor, so you need to play. And he's like, huh? If you hear him tell, he's like, I thought they were joking. And he's like, oh man, I got to get my helmet. He went out there, played the Chiefs real tough. They had a chance to win it. At 4th down and short, our coach said, nope, we're punting it away to give the ball to Patrick Mahomes. And guess what happens when you punt to Patrick Mahomes? He's going to take it down there and get him in at least position to kick the field goal, which they did, right? So I think this year our coaching staff's like, no, we want to end with the ball. That's what you see in week one when we won, and this last week is the priority is to keep the ball going and not just, hey, I'm going to waste some clock here towards the end of the game and punt it to them with 1 or 2 minutes left. No, we're going to keep the ball in offense. We're going to be the last one to score, kind of like playing a game of Madden. If you play video games, it's like a lot of times those games end up being, hey, whoever has the ball last and scores last ends up winning those games because there's really not much defense. And I think that Staley's got that same mentality. So I think that's the aggressiveness and the faith to go out and do it is number one. And I think that trickles all the way through the whole team. So last year, there's a lot of games where the Chargers were up at halftime, sometimes by multiple scores. And what would happen is the team under Anthony Lynn would just turtle up. They would basically go into prevent defense for the entire second half almost, and they would just run the ball nonstop up the middle, go 3 and out, and allow these other quarterbacks and these other teams to come back and win it, and we'd lose these 1-score games. And I don't think that happens under Staley and Lombardi. I think that they've got a new plan in place. You talked about our weapons. Mike Williams, I was actually advocating for them to potentially cut Mike Williams in the offseason just because the way he
hasn't been healthy, right?
He hasn't been healthy, and he hasn't lived up to the hype. Why? Because the previous staff had basically said, hey, you're tall and you can jump and that's what you're good at. So go run a go route and we'll just throw it up to you 3 or 4 times a game and you'll make a big play. And that's all they asked him to do. Now they've got him in kind of like the Mike Thomas role where they've got him going all over the field, running a lot of routes, using leverage, using body control. And he is a completely different player. And I'm glad that they retained him and I'm hoping that they can re-sign him because him and Keenan Allen are basically stars on that side of the ball. So, just a whole different mentality. And finally, again, I know I'm talking a lot. I'll get to my final answer here on Herbert, but the biggest deal for Herbert, I think, is that he's got clean pockets this year. They've really revamped the offensive line. And last year, when you watched him in clean pockets, I don't know if he was just nervous. I don't know if he was just excitable, but his clean pocket passing was not great. He overthrew guys a lot. He underthrew them. He threw it late or held on too much. This year under clean pocket, he is looking smooth and controlled, and he knows what he wants to do. So I think the biggest difference is, yeah, he's still really good under pressure. He's still really good on third down. But when it's a clean pocket and he has time to think about what he's doing, he's not overthinking it this year, and he's just letting it fly, and he's being extremely accurate. So I think that's the biggest difference with him and why I think that he's just, he's the next great quarterback in this league. Obviously, I'm going to say that, but he really feels that way because the biggest part of his game that I thought was lacking last year was his ability to really operate in a clean pocket and to really make the accurate throws more often. And that has really improved this year. So it just feels like the sky's the limit for him, especially in this Lombardi offense that's really saying, hey, what do you do well, Justin? Let's do that. So that's kind of how I feel it's different and why we feel so excited about this year.
Yeah. Last thing on that, and we can move on. But we experienced it with Carr, man, where he got hit early. He got hit as a rookie early. It was never a clean pocket. So at times when quarterbacks get hit so much and then they do have it, even just the timing of things, even the anticipation where they kind of not forced it necessarily, but what that changes with how soon they throw the ball or how soon the timing is or move, whatever it is, it can impact it mentally. And so I think that's a part of it. And I think Herbert experienced that a little bit, but now and it's funny that they knocked him on his, the way he carries himself. He's not a natural born leader kind of coming in the draft. Right. And it's just like, no, he's just calm. And that's how he is. And he was able to do that in Arrowhead, which is not a lot of people can do. So I don't know. That might be my last compliment of the Chargers, but I think I really do. I like Herbert a lot, and I'm okay saying that. So.
Yeah, I think again, I think we're all just in just awe of him. I personally, I did a lot of scouting of quarterbacks, obviously coming from the draft when we drafted him, and I was more about Tua than Herbert, because everything you saw in film, again, he had the same situation. You talk about changing coordinators this year. I mean, basically, since he started college, he's had a new offensive coordinator, and almost every other year he's had a new head coach coaching him. So he's been through the ringer, but he's a smart guy. He handles himself well, he handles the pressure well. And I think he rolls with the punches. And I don't think there's any fear that, some of us, Mr. Waz, we're talking about a sophomore slump and worrying about, that was Bez. Sorry, you're right. Bez, Bez was talking about, hey, he's worried about a sophomore slump. He's worried about him regressing maybe a little bit this year. And some of those stats may not be repeatable. And obviously that's been blown out of the water. So, we're excited for him as well.
I mean, it's not all good news, Andy. I mean, I don't know how closely you follow the Bolts, but, we fixed left tackle. We've now got problems at right tackle with Gallagher going down injured. Storm Norton is bad. You might as well put me in there. I'll beef up. I'll put 150 pounds and I'll have a go at playing right tackle. But we've now got issues I fully envisage that we'll go after an offensive lineman in the first round again in the 2022 draft. So, but yeah, to John's point, we are a lot better. You know, Corey Lindsley's come in, hasn't been brilliant, but he's shored up the offensive line at the centre. Matt Feeler at left guard has been absolutely phenomenal, and it's going to be another interesting matchup with Max Crosby on Monday night, because you guys are coming after the quarterback. You know, you're going to bring some heat, and it's Herbert is pretty cool. And if you watch him closely, he does not look like he's under any duress, even when the blitz is coming, even when he's getting chased around. If he's escaped the pocket and he's getting chased, he's like, whatever. If I get hit, I get hit. If I find a passer, I'm going to find a passer. And that's something that we didn't have under Philip Rivers. Rivers was brilliant, and we loved him, but he just wasn't mobile. He just didn't move those feet. Now we've got something different. And the guy, look, the guy's got moral courage. You know, he'll take a hit. We've seen him blocking that first game against the Chiefs in week 2 of last year. He'll scramble. He's a tough dude. But thanks for the compliments, Andy.
Well, I think that's a good segue talking about offensive line. You know, I'd like to take a minute here now, transition. Let's talk about Monday night. So we've all said nice things about Derek Carr, about your defense, Casey Hayward, which is easy to say because we used to like him here. But we've all said our nice things. Let's take the gloves off. Let's get a little chippy. Let's start talking about Monday night. Okay, so I think definitely our listeners are going to want to know, you know, what's the injury status of Josh Jacobs, because the Chargers have just been atrocious at stopping the run. Antonio Gibson has not been very good as a runner. He looked great against us. Ezekiel Elliott has had a slow start to the season, looked great to us, and he's kind of been on an upward trend. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not looked like an NFL running back of any great caliber, had 100 yards against us last week. So obviously we have a problem stopping the run. So am I worried about Kenyon Drake or a Peyton Barber? Not so much. Am I worried about Josh Jacobs? Heck yes, I am. That dude's a beast, and we've always had trouble stopping him. So what is the status of Josh Jacobs? Are there any other injuries we should know about coming into the game? And how do you guys feel that like the Raiders might be game planning for Herbert and the Chargers from the defensive side?
As far as Jacobs is concerned, I think they're kind of keeping it pretty close to the cuff. And I think it's one of those things that it's like, you know, no news is bad news because he's been out. And I don't think that, you know, we're going to necessarily see any positivity of him reaching towards that until we kind of hear that he's practicing and that things are moving forward. I think they are, you know, trying to get him ready for the long run or you know, for the long term. He's had injury history, and so he's had issues in that before. So I think they're probably trying to be very cautious with the situation. I personally know just as much as just about anybody else does from what they release on the information and all that stuff. But I think with Jacobs, you know, that obviously just knocks our run game down. We've seen all year that we haven't had a run game. The Ravens game, he put it in the end zone twice and didn't necessarily have the greatest day stats-wise, but he was a difference maker in the game. And we've seen Drake and Barber try to patchwork that. But with something that's been a strength for us, you know, last year and in general under Gruden is, you know, now one of the weaker parts of our offense. And so it's going to be interesting. I obviously hope he plays. We got a little extra day to get him healthy and whatnot. But I mean, as of right now, I'm kind of just expecting him not to play until we hear something differently, or at least, you know, him being limited. For you guys, it looks great right now because, you know, even if he does play, he's probably not 100%, you know. So I think
he'll still get 100 yards against our run defense.
I think how they treat it is going to be very interesting on whether I don't think they're trying to rush him back. I think they feel okay and comfortable enough with either Carr throwing 60 times or the other two guys patchworking it until he is healthy. But, you know, week 4, when we got 13 more weeks or 12 more weeks to go because of a bye, it's 13 more weeks. Sorry, there's 17 now.
I know.
It's this whole thing.
too.
No, it made sense though. It's 12 and a bye, so I think
yeah. Anyway, so we, you know, I don't know. I think they're going to take their time bringing him back. Obviously, we want him back as quick as possible, but I think right now it's trending well for you guys in that regard. So, Andy.
Well, if the gloves are off, we're not going to tell you anything about the injury designations that we know. Micah lied to you because he actually talked to Josh this past, a couple days ago. So, no, I think it's, you think about it, they ruled out Jacobs twice in the last 2 weeks. We have a longer week Monday night. I think there's a good shot he goes, and we'll see how it goes, right? But I think just knowing Gruden and knowing, the team that we're up against is we're going to treat you guys just like we treat Mahomes, really, where it's like, we're going to try to control the game, going to control the run game. And even it's Peyton Barber, but he was still able to get effective and be effective. And if Gruden can't run the ball and establish it, I'm not really worried about anyone on your D-line outside of Joey Bosa. Thank goodness Melvin Ingram was gone, because Ingram was hurt for 14 weeks and would play the 2 weeks against the Raiders and have 5 sacks. So, I think they match up well as far as the D-line. I think your backers, Murray isn't really coming on like I thought he would. I think there's just a lot of room for him to grow, which will be fine. But if the Raiders aren't able to establish the run game, I think they'll just turn into short passing. They'll try to control the clock that way. I don't think we're going to get off the run game, but it might just turn into how creative we get and how the short game works. And because I know this, the only thing I do know is that Gruden's going to try to keep Herbert off the field as much as he can. So however that looks, and if Jacobs is healthy, historically he has really kind of gave it to you guys. That's just the stats. That's not taking a jab, but it's also the facts,
Oh, I know the stats. Trust me. I've got Jacobs on multiple fantasy teams.
There you go.
I've seen firsthand the way he can demolish a defense. So.
Same here.
So I actually am hoping. Part of me hopes he plays, and part of me hopes he doesn't. I can't make.
It's bittersweet. That's the crappy part about fantasy is that we always like look at it and be like, well, it's kind of hard not to play guys against the Raiders because they suck, and they're going to put up numbers against the Raiders defense. But yeah, fantasy is always a rough little wrinkle in your fandom.
So I'd love to know a little bit how you guys are feeling about your offense going into the game, specifically your receivers. Obviously, you've kind of got a cavalcade of guys. You've got, you've got Bryan Edwards, you've got Hunter Renfrow, you've got Henry Ruggs. Is there anyone else I'm missing on your receiving core? Who's your number one? Do you have a number one, or how are you guys handling that receiving core? Because it just feels like you've got a bunch of guys who are, have all this potential and they have flashes, but I haven't really seen like a wide receiver one really step out and say, hey, I'm kind of the leader of this offense.
Yeah, I would say Waller's our number one, even though he's not underneath the wide receiver, tag. And going into it, that's kind of how it is. I feel like it's hard to, stray away from that in general. But, we saw him go off against the Ravens and then, essentially kind of get tailored down a little bit in these last 2 games. So I think that I feel really good because I feel like we have weapons across the board. Renfrow can be that reliable guy over the middle and just kind of finding pockets to get open. They've been getting Ruggs the ball, getting it in his hands, letting him do different things and kind of building his confidence up. And then Edwards has been, a great bigger body guy who has shown that he can, make some moves over the top. He can, find deeper pockets to get into. And, his has been more like bigger plays as opposed to like just like consistently, performing, having, he'll be a 3 catches for 85 yards or, 4 catches for around there ish, or have one big play as opposed to, getting 8 different targets. But there's not really like one solidified, number one guy outside of Waller, I would say, but I think everybody is contributing. I think the way Gruden's offense work is he just tries to dial up what's going to work best. Doesn't care who gets it or, who has the ball or whatnot. Like, can we produce? And Derek Carr has a lot of control at the line of scrimmage too. So I think he's another one of those persons. Like, I don't care about getting certain people, looks, even though they threw the ball at Waller 20 times against the Ravens. But I think that they are in a point where they are just trying to get everybody the ball and just trying to get it to, it's as simple and stupid as it sounds, just get it to the open guy, get it to the right guy, the right read. And, everybody's been able to produce and everybody's been able to, help out in that regard. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think Waller's our number one. And it's positionless football these days, right? So you can still scheme up around your number one guy, which is Waller. And so, but it really takes the other guys to contribute to develop, like Renfrow, Ruggs, Edwards, etc. I think what Gruden does a good job on is, or what we've seen at least, is being able to match up, against where our weaknesses are. So we had Jacobs out against Pittsburgh, and this last week. So then we got into more double tights, right? So that gave us Waller, that gave us Foster Moreau, as a threat. And so they don't have the, the man beaters like some teams do. But if you look at Shanahan's offense, you look at McVay's offense, they just have a bunch of guys that if you can get them into the right role and give them enough, confidence, then they can get going. So that's kind of our approach. And some teams, you guys have better top end receivers with Williams and Allen, and then it's a little weak. I'm just, I could be wrong, but
it's a lot weaker.
Okay. but you scheme around it, right? So that's kind of where we're at. We're just in a different point, but yeah, I think that's how we attack. And I feel good about the progression of our receiving group. And that includes our 2 tight ends. And who knows, we might bring Jason Witten back out of retirement just to have more tight ends. Let's bring, Gruden has 6 tight ends at a time sometimes, but now Drake's been able to be utilized out of the backfield too. So there's certain things, but it'll be fun. I know that on Monday night.
Yeah, it's interesting. People talk about what the Chargers did to the Chiefs, and one of the things they did is they just had Derwin basically on Kelsey most of the game. And Kelsey did have some big plays on one drive. That was the drive where our backup safety was in because Derwin kind of got banged up a little bit. So Kelsey basically feasted on that rookie. And then he, when Derwin came back in, he kind of disappeared. So I imagine that we give the same treatment to Waller, given that he can be so pivotal. And I mean, he's a beast. I mean, he is easily one of the top 3 tight ends in the league. I mean, and we've seen that if he's open, Carr will get him the ball and he'll do good things with the ball when he's got it. So I imagine you will probably get that same kind of Derwin maybe shadowing Waller. And then it'll be interesting to see who they feel like to focus on, right? I think much like the Patriots like to take away your number 1 and number 2 options, I think Staley's defense does the same thing. So obviously that's easy against the Chiefs. You take away Kelsey, you double team Hill, and you make Mahomes throw it to other guys, and you see Mahomes making these mistakes, right? Mahomes wants to play that hero ball, which turns into turnovers, right? But Gus Bradley, I'll say, for all his faults with the Chargers, he has always played the Chiefs well. He's always kind of understood that, hey, I'll give Mahomes the little stuff and then wait for him to make a mistake on a bigger throw and then capitalize. And that's why the Chiefs have always had troubles against a Gus Bradley defense. So I think that's a feather in his cap from his time with us. And I imagine he brings that to you guys. So, and I imagine he brings a little bit of that against us. I don't know what you guys think about what defense you might be, what kind of defensive plan you might have for us, but I imagine he's going to kind of treat, like you said, Herbert like Mahomes and say, well, you know what? He's got that big arm. We don't want to let him beat us deep, so we're not going to shut that off. Do you think that's kind of the approach he takes, or do you think he does something a little bit different on Monday?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. When you look at it, once again, the teams that we have faced, you had the Ravens who were beat up at running back. You had the Steelers who they don't have an identity really. And then you have the Dolphins and they have 4 different running backs that they rotate. But, I think with Eckler in the backfield, that he's a threat, man. And so I think if you look at the guys we got to take away, it's Williams, it's Keenan Allen, and it's Eckler. So I think, we would have to look at it that way. I don't know if there's a solution really to stop Herbert and the weapons outside of just, kind of that discipline-based defense and being able to keep everyone in front. We don't have a Derwin James really to just take away someone. So good on you guys to have that, but we just don't. So I think it's going to be, we have to keep it creative. We can't let, Herbert figure it out. But I do think that there's not as many weapons that we have to account for, but that doesn't mean that, we just go and just try to take Mike Williams away. Well, good luck, because, Keenan Allen on anyone, not only his old buddy Hayward or, Trayvon Mullen or whatever, he's going to take him away, or he's going to get after those guys regardless. So it'll be interesting. We're going to have to get, versatile, and that's what the defense is. So whether we can execute is another story.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a high scoring game for the most part. I think what the biggest thing is, kind of like you're saying, Bradley's saying, let him have the underneath stuff. Don't get beat over the top type of thing. So I think the biggest thing is going to be how many times can we limit you guys to field goals? And then, as Andy was saying, the best way to, take away from an offense is to keep them off the field. So Herbert's in that same realm of, the less you can get the ball in his hands, the better off you are. So I think that'll be the biggest thing. There's a good chance everybody has a bajillion yards this game, but it's going to come down to, and it's going to come down to, how many field goals can, you get limited to. And
they're not going to kick field goals though, guys. Like, I'm sorry. The Chargers are just like, no, they're going to throw with Herbert on 4th and 17 if they have to. We
will go for it, but we still haven't fixed our special teams. Our Tristan Vizcaino's come in. He's missed a few already after 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So look, it's even if we get the opportunity to score a field goal. We spoke quite a few times about leaving points in the field. Chargers lead the league in that. I'm telling you now, we've got to try and get over the hump of actually, not taking the opportunities. We weren't great in red zone offense, but we've got to now start finding some consistency. Yeah, I think Andy, you said it earlier. Sophomore quarterback under another playbook. This is week 4 coming into. We've got to find some rhythm. We're still creating far too many mistakes, giving up too many penalties, and that's where we will come unstuck. Potentially, I'm not saying the Raiders aren't good enough to beat the Chargers, but the Chargers have a tendency to beat ourselves, and that's something that we still got to iron out, because Mike Williams has had 3 drops already, despite his hot start, and it's going to happen. I mean, Herbert, he fired a missile at Jalen Guyton on Sunday.
Hit him in the face mask.
Basically like this. That. Yeah, it came at him so quickly. There are going to be mistakes in this game, and to your point, Micah, about a high-scoring game, I think it will. It'll be backwards and forwards, and it could come down to a clutch moment where somebody has a pick and has a turnover late in the game. I mean, Asante Samuel Jr., our rookie, he started off brilliantly this season. He's on for his 3rd pick in as many games. So there are so many narratives. For me, this is probably the most exciting Raiders-Chargers game in the last 5 or 6 years, I could say, because I think both teams have got players playing at a high level, especially with Carr playing well at quarterback for you guys, Herbert playing well, the receiver core. Joey Bosa, he's been carrying an injury, just like Josh Jacobs got that extra day or so to recover. It's important that Bosa, I don't expect him to have fully participated in practice all week. I'm guessing he'll be feet up at the weekend with an ice pack on his ankle. So if he's not fully fit, that's an issue. Derwin James has been carrying a toe injury. So we've got all these little subplots in the game, and I think it's going to be one of the best Monday night football games of the season, in my opinion. Even though it's early on in the, it's just going to be fun. But for the neutral, I think for us 4 sat here, I think we're all going to be really nervous and probably losing our marbles. Come the 2-minute warning.
I think you'll take a toe injury over what you've experienced previously with James. So
100%. He's so good. He is everything that everyone says about the man. I mean, I made a joke before about there was a debate on our side about, do we carry 3 quarterbacks or 2? I think I was the only one that said, as an advocate, for 3 because of the COVID situation. That's not disappeared. But on the other side of the coin, I said, look, if Herbert goes out, play Derwin James. I'm sure he could play quarterback. He's just one of those dudes that could do everything.
Yeah.
He could. I'm sure he played quarterback in high school, to be honest.
He probably did. I know he played basketball to a decent standard as an amateur. He's just got one of those athletic minds. He's got the physique. He's got the mentality. He's got the drive. He's got everything. And he is that good. I don't want to say he's the best player in our team, because that's a bit unfair on the likes of Allen, Bosa, Herbert, but he's right up there as a signature player for the LA Chargers.
Yeah, I think we touched on something you talked about, not wanting to kick field goals. It's not that I don't think they want to. I don't think they can. I actually made a joke. There's a video of Justin Herbert kicking field goals when he was a rookie, and he was pretty good. And I kept saying, you know what? Forget the field goal team. Make Herbert the field goal kicker when you're close, and then make the defense decide, is he really kicking it, or is he actually going to take a play here? Because I think that would be an amazing offense. But
new Wildcat. New Wildcat.
Field goal Wildcat. I love it. So that's definitely a fear for us. Our defensive line, as you mentioned, but outside of Bosa, has been mediocre at best. So are we able to, capitalize? I know you've got the rookie Leatherwood, who I liked coming out of college, but he's obviously struggled as a rookie. It happens. Playing offensive guard and offensive tackle in the NFL is really hard compared to college. So, but I still don't know if we're going to be able to match up well against that. So getting pressure on Carr and making it uncomfortable, because when he's comfortable, he's as good as anybody. But making him uncomfortable, I think, is where you unlock that kind of, potential for disaster. So getting Carr uncomfortable and fixing our penalties and field goal issues, those are my three kind of watch outs for this game on the Chargers side. How about the Raiders side? What are your kind of big kind of things that make you cringe and go, gosh, we really need to fix this or we're sunk against the Bolts?
Well, I think going into each week, the biggest thing on our offensive side of things has been our offensive line, because it's gone from one of our biggest strengths to very questionable, with our center Andre James not being able to make a snap, normal regular shotgun snap, and like I said, Leatherwood has kind of struggled a little bit and whatnot. So every week going into it, it's like, man, the offensive line, are they going to screw us, this game or whatnot? So we've gone against some pretty good defensive lines so far and have been able to pull out wins with that. I think that's always the question mark. And then Gruden's offense is so built around establishing the run and having a strong run game and getting things established in that and setting the tone with the run game, that we've been lucky enough that Carr has been able to just sling the ball all over the place because he's needed to. But the more we can't get the run established, the more John Gruden's offense doesn't click on all cylinders. So I think those are the biggest thing. And obviously the offensive line is a huge part of getting the run established. So we saw Barber kind of come into his own a little bit late in the game last game. But for all accounts, we couldn't necessarily get it going too well last game and really in general this year. So that's pretty much my biggest concern is the offensive line. Can we get the run game going? I have faith that Carr can make it happen. He can, if he needs to take over a game again, but how long can you really ride that luck, And then on the defensive side of things, I think it's just Herbert being Herbert. He's got so much confidence now in this year, because he's been balling out and he balled out this year so far as well, that I think limiting him to shorter stuff, letting him have the underneath stuff is going to be the biggest key. But also we've had great defensive line play that has allowed the cornerbacks to not have to necessarily cover for a long period of time. And the Raiders have been known to break down when that type of stuff happens. So I'm worried about him, expanding plays, getting out of the pocket, and just eventually finding people down the field, giving up like third and longs. The Raiders somehow figure out ways to do that all the time. So I think the biggest thing for me, establishing the run and our offensive line, and then also just trying to limit Herbert's big plays, because he has a big arm and he's young and he's mobile and he can make those things happen. So it's definitely concerning.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess on each side of the ball, outside of what Mike has said, is I think if you guys match up pretty well, with your secondary on our weapons, because like we talked about, they're not true number ones, across the board. I think you guys have a lot of good depth. I really like Nasir Adderley. Obviously, Derwin James is Derwin James. Then you get into it, Chris Harris Jr. I think you got Kenneth Murray, who can run and chase with the best of them. So, and then you take Brandon Staley. So I think Staley is going to be able to scheme up pretty well against them. And I think it's just going to be a lot of man on man who can beat who in that instance. So if we can't establish a run, and we have to go to what truly has carried us in the passing game to win these games, I think it's going to be tough, right? And then if our O-line's beaten up and you got Bosa just pinning his ears back and going home, then good luck, right? So I think on the offensive side of the ball, that's a concern. Defensive-wise, I'd be concerned if you guys establish the run on us. It's like it hasn't been a strength, and if you can, good luck, right? So Eckler is good. I think our D-line has been better. But still, I think there's a way where you can get Eckler in the game early and often, with the touches inside the tackle, but also out of the backfield, and be able to neutralize this threat of Herbert over the top, right? But if you can get Eckler involved and establish a run, not even establish a run at 100 yards, but, being able to get gashes of 4 to 6 yards to keep us honest in the passing game, that would be a concern of mine. So.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't worry too much about Eckler in the running game, because he's not really an organic back. We use him as a hybrid, really. He's another weapon for Herbert. Yeah, and he will gash up 3 or 4 yards, but I don't think we're ever going to see Eckler with 100 yards rushing, because he's just too good with the ball in his hands. I think he was the highest graded receiver,
pass catching back.
In week 2. So again, it's Staley playing to our strengths, as opposed to, well, actually, you're a running back, so we'll just get you stuffed at 1 yard or a tackle for loss. we are really playing to our strengths. But a big concern for the Chargers, I don't know how much tape you've seen on us. We're getting ourselves into 3rd and long situations too many times. Williams, Eckler, and Allen will get us out of that jam, but it's becoming a bit repetitive, and eventually the defense are going to suss this out. I mean, we had a 4th and 4 on Sunday against the Chiefs. Flag on Slater, 4th and 9. We went for it. I think it was Guyton. He drew a penalty.
Good, because he dropped it again.
He did drop it, but the point was we were aggressive and we got away with one. Eventually, when we keep going for these 3rd and longs, we're going to come unstuck. I think we have to be a bit more efficient on 1st and 2nd downs, because we need to find that offensive rhythm rather than relying on Herbert and his chemistry with Williams and Allen to get us out of this situation where it looks like there's going to be a turnover and down. So that's a concern for me, and just the penalties. We've got to clean that up, and it's not all on the rookies. A lot of our veterans doing silly things, illegal shifts, false starts, offsides, face masks. Look, it's going to happen, but we've got to try and cut that out, because it's no good giving Derek Carr the football. He doesn't need an excuse to be throwing 300-400 yards. He has been doing the first 3 weeks of the season. I suppose it's the same for you guys, and I think this is why this is a good matchup, because there's for every X there's an O, and it's going to come down to a close game. I think it really is. I think it'll come down to possibly a field goal, because hopefully I can't say I don't. Well, no, look, but John, we've said this before. The Chiefs know how to put numbers up. The Raiders haven't been messing around this season, and the Bolts have had. We had 2 off the board against Dallas. We've been in the positions where we've been able to put points on the board. So I don't see this as a low-scoring game. So it's going to come down to that clutch moment, and I think it's going to come down to some individual brilliance from somebody on either side of the football. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game. I think we're all really excited. Mike and Andy, do you have anything else for us that the Raider fans are really trying to pick apart heading into Monday?
Well, I'll make you feel better for a second. Is we gave up a 4th and 20 to Jacoby Brissett last week. So even if you have those penalties, it can be 4th down and you got a shot. So, no, I think there's a lot of ways to get into this. I think it's kind of like the Spider-Man meme where we're just pointing at each other. We're kind of the same team in a lot of ways. And also we're not used to success. So that'll be fun. And it's Raiders Chargers and Monday night. So it's just going to be weird anyways. So I think that's what we got looking forward to, but no, I think that's it. I appreciate you guys having us on. It's been fun talking, and we could probably talk for another couple hours, to be honest.
Yeah, we've always talked about how interdivision games are wonky no matter what, and primetime games are wonky no matter what, and we're getting both out of this one. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. I think that I'm surprised it's gone this long without it being mentioned. I guess a little bit in the beginning, but like, the Broncos are absolute frauds in our division. The Chiefs are on the bottom portion. It's like we're fighting for some dominance right here in the division, and it's great. And even though you guys were so close to being 3-0 as well, as we all sit here, type of thing. So I think it's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be 2 high-powered offenses, going against each other with 2. Decent defenses kind of going against each other. So it's, like I said, matches up very well. I'm very excited for it. I think we can all agree the Chiefs are overrated and the Broncos are frauds. So
100% frauds. 100%. They're going to get exposed here real soon.
They play the Ravens this week, I think.
Yeah, they do. And I don't think you've seen the stat up there, but they've got a quote unquote remaining strength of schedule. And I think the Broncos have like the hardest remaining strength of schedule, like in the league. And I think the Chiefs might be a little bit, not too much better, but better than theirs, and then you, and then we actually have the easiest strength of schedule moving forward because we knocked out a few hard games early on. So whether that means anything, we don't know, because we never know who's going to be any good, right? It's hard for us to decide who's actually a good team or not this early in the season, but I think that's positive, for at least for the 2 of us, that our teams don't have a super hard strength of schedule like the Broncos will, which I think will even out. So I really think that whoever wins this is basically number 1 in the division at this point, because again, the Chiefs are 2 games back now. I think the Broncos are losing, so if you guys win your you're 4-0, I think you'll be 4-0 by yourself, and that'll be a nice cushion. If we win, I think again we'd have a tiebreaker over you that kind of put us at, in theory, with strength of schedule involved, that would put us at the top of the list. So this is for the crown, babe. This is for number 1 in the AFC West after 4 weeks. I think it's a big deal.
And that's why the only way to end this is to put a little skin in the game, like let's not money. Sorry. Skin is, I guess, cash, right? But we can figure this out offline, but just have a little friendly bet. I think it'd be fun.
Okay. I like that. I think we do a little Monday night bet. I like it. Let's we'll go offline for everybody who's listening on the podcast or anyone who's watching on YouTube. We'll tweet that out at our on our Twitter accounts, and we'll come up with a bet, and then whatever it is, we'll pay off that bet for sure. I mean, not that I'm worried about it, because I'm much more comfortable betting on Justin Herbert than Derek Carr, if I'm being perfectly honest.
See, you finally took the gloves off, which you wanted to a long time ago, and I'm glad you finally did.
I'm just looking forward to Joey Bosa destroying Alex Leatherwood, because
there you go.
He's given up 3 sacks, 5 hurries, and a few hits already. So that's if Bosa's fit, of course.
Yeah. Like I said, it'll make it easier if we can just triple team your number 1, because you don't really have a number 2. So it's just a bunch of number 3s out there running around. So
we got a bunch of 1Bs. So
1Bs.
You can lock down our number 1. We got a bunch of 1Bs. So well,
all right.
Should we get a prediction going?
Let's do it. We always do predictions for ours. So let's go. Okay, so you why don't you guys, you brought it up, so why don't we let's hear your prediction. What do you think?
Well, I'll start out. I mean, I think the Raiders can win just about every game, right? And they've been playing well so far. I do think they're going to win this game. I do think it's going to be very close, and you kind of alluded to it on it being, maybe a field goal away. I think the Raiders are going to win 31-28 and come away with a close victory, whether that's you guys bonking a field goal or us hitting one to end the game. But 31-28 for me.
Waz, what do you think?
Just mention Dan King, one of our co-hosts. He's got 27-20 charges. Good man, Dan.
Good stuff, Dan.
So
jump in.
For you two guys, you're going to be interested to know that I'm 1-2 on the season. So I predicted we'd defeat Washington, we'd defeat Dallas, and we'd lose to the Chiefs. So I'm trying to redeem myself here. I'm going to go for 38-35 Chargers.
Whoa.
Hammer the over.
Yeah, hammer that over.
I love the over. I said that on week 2 versus Dallas. I was like, hammer the over and take the Chargers and the points, and you'll be good. And that did not work out. So, Andy, what do you think? What do you got dialed up for this one?
40-0 Raiders. No,
Whoa.
just kidding. No.
Gloves off.
No, it's I'm gonna go. Let's do this. Let's just hammer the over again. I'll go with 34-30 Raiders. That's what I'm going with.
Wow. That's a good take. It's really funny is I actually kind of agree with both of you in a sense. I do think, Mike, I think you're right. I think there is I think the Raiders do probably score 31 points at least. I think that the offense is good, is rolling, and I don't know if our defense is necessarily set up to stop what they want to do. And Andy, I think you're right. The 34 is probably the right number you need to get to if you're going to win this game. However, unfortunately, I only see your Raiders scoring 31, and I see the Chargers scoring 34.
There you go.
Exactly. So I see a 34-31 Chargers victory. And try to avoid kicking any field goals. Maybe all 2-point conversions too. I don't know.
It's going to be like 14-9.
Yeah. Oh, of course, right? Because everyone's like over, lots of points, and they'll be like, and that there we go. The safety is going to win. It's going to be 2-0 based off of safety. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Anyways, all right. Well, you know what? Again, I want to thank you guys for joining us. This was a lot of fun. We'll play you again later on the season. Hopefully, you guys are available and we can do this again. Yeah. Definitely, we'll probably both be feeling a little different than we were today. Who knows? Maybe we'll be feeling the exact same and be positive. Yeah. We'll both be. Maybe that will truly be for the division crown at that point. Who knows? I mean,
it'd be fantastic.
Right now, it could be anyway. So, thanks for coming on. For our podcast listeners, where can we find you on the socials?
Yeah. So, our podcast Twitter is @TakeRaider. My personal Twitter @MikeHassan55. Andy is _Andy Mac 2 _. You can find us on Instagram as well @Raider Take Podcast, and at YouTube as well as Raider Take Podcast too. So we try to get everything, content going out there. Trying to get more involved with video stuff as well. Pigskin Podcast Network has, allowed us a lot of awesome, things to use in regards to that. So we're excited to go along in this journey, with you guys and with everybody that's involved with that. So very excited for that.
Yes, that definitely. Thank you, and shout out to Pigskin Football Network. It's a great podcast network to be on. We're really excited to be here and for the opportunities. And I've got, if you're working on your video, I've got a good suggestion. Whatever this bet is, when you guys lose, you can film you paying up that bet and put it on your page. So that'll be exciting. Will be exciting. Waz, where can we find you on
those details?
You can find me at Endzone85. Charged_up_bolts is our main magazine website, and Charged Up Pod is our podcast Twitter handle.
Exactly. And of course, you can always find me at Adroit Airs, #AudibleChocolate. You can find my alter ego at Nomeo Greats out there talking it up. And as always, we're happy to have you guys listening to us. We appreciate every single one of you that watches and listens. You're the lifeblood of this podcast and of this video stream. So we truly appreciate you guys. And that's all we got for today. Enjoy the Monday night game. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.